A young enthusiast starts with an invincible spending system. He has access to an unlimited number of spirit stones, and each day, the system updates with a different type of spending item. As he continues to squander, he will strengthen his power. The young man is named Ye Feng. Initially, he was an internet enthusiast on his home planet, but accidentally moved to the Shen Tia with acute N continent. Before he had time to reflect, his mind was filled with memories of this world. It turns out that this place primarily values martial skill. Here, countless people fight, enjoying various challenges. Even a newly established sect can attract numerous applications. The Star Soul sect, in front of him, was founded just half a month ago. Feng had no intention of joining the crowd for the evaluation, as he had not yet seen any trap-type skills. It was preferable to remain discreet and find a place to hide. But just as he was about to leave, two individuals landed in front of the Star Soul sect. The main one, a woman, turned out to be the sect leader, named Luo Chenxue, who immediately announced the rules for accepting disciples today. There was no need to check qualifications, age, or cultivation level. The atmosphere erupted as soon as she said this. Everyone thought they had a chance to join. However, what caught Feng's attention was the extraordinary beauty of the woman, surpassing even the influential figures from his previous world. Nevertheless, Chenxue set a requirement. Within an hour, they had to provide 10,000 low-grade spirit stones to join. Instantly, the previously excited crowd felt like they were doused with cold water, as this price was simply too high. Everyone declined one after another. At that moment, the reputation of the Star Soul sect plummeted. Even Feng was surprised. He hadn't expected to encounter such greedy practices in another world. Probably, only a naive person would agree. But at that moment, a system window appeared in front of Feng. It was the activation of his spending ability called the Invincible Prodigal System. He thought it would take a few years to activate, but it happened sooner than expected. However, this system seemed somewhat enigmatic. It simply explained that spending money would strengthen him. Just waste money and the system would handle the rest. Feng then opened the information panel, and as expected, his combat level was very low, but the item under the spending category was surprising. 10,000 level 9 Heavenly Thunder Talismans. It turned out that the system not only provided infinite spirit stones, but also a different spending item each day. The host was required to spend it all daily to earn prodigal points as a reward. However, if he failed to spend it all, points would be deducted. These prodigal points were used to strengthen oneself and could be exchanged for realms, martial skills, divine powers, and other items. Reviewing these rules, the protagonist felt somewhat pressured. At this moment, the system issued its first task: join the Star Soul sect. On the other hand, Chenxue was intentionally setting such strict requirements. The reason was her father, the leader of the powerful extreme star sect on the Shen Tia with acute N continent, named Wuming. He specifically asked his daughter to establish a sect to temper her mental state, but Chenxue, only wishing to cultivate and ascend, did not want to be bothered by trivial matters. The reason for her dedication was a secret. She was the reincarnation of a sacred woman from the higher realms who was murdered in her past life, but her father knew nothing of this. Returning to the present moment, after waiting for a while and seeing no one sign up, Chenxue prepared to leave, as she felt it was unlikely that anyone could meet the cost. But before she could take a few steps, a male voice said, "Sect leader, please wait. I wish to join. Seeing that the sect is in dire need of resources in its beginnings, I am willing to contribute 100,000 low-grade spirit stones." Upon hearing this, Chenxue was perplexed. She couldn't believe that someone in this remote place could afford such a sum. Turning around, she saw a young man approaching, none other than Feng, who immediately handed her a ring containing 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. He wished to join the Star Soul sect today. Upon receiving the ring with these stones, Chenxue examined it immediately. To her surprise, it truly contained 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Not only was she astonished that someone here could afford it, but she also couldn't believe there was such a generous philanthropist. Feeling incredulous, she asked, "Are you sure you want to join our sect? You should know that our sect currently doesn't even have a place to reside." To which Feng calmly replied that he had enough money and could contribute to building the sect. Chenxue felt defeated by this young man but still tried to dissuade him. Her sect had no resources to offer, and joining would be detrimental to him. However, with the prodigal system, Feng never lacked resources. He immediately assured her that he would provide resources for the sect in the future. Chen Xue's frustration level rose again. At this moment, Feng also sensed that she apparently didn't want him to join. Holding back his anger, Chen Xue thought to herself, "Where did this fool come from?" She truly did not want anyone to join her sect. Her internal conflict was intense. At this moment, she was on the verge of attacking Feng, but, having made a promise, she couldn't retract it. She told the protagonist he could join but would not receive any cultivation instruction and would have to figure everything out on his own. Hearing this, Feng was genuinely surprised. However, after a bit of reflection, he realized he probably didn't need anyone else to teach him. Seeing Feng deep in thought, Chen Xue assumed he was hesitating, hoping this would discourage him. Nonetheless, the next moment, the protagonist said indifferently, "Sect leader, don't worry, I don't need anything." Feng was ecstatic inside. Joining a sect where he could fulfill his tasks without restrictions. Why wouldn't he? This time, Chen Xue was completely defeated, to the point where she almost knelt before the protagonist. She couldn't understand why he would happily spend 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Immediately, Chen Xue drew her weapon, ready to attack him with all her fury. However, Elder Bai quickly intervened from the side and said, "Young lady, we cannot make things more difficult. The sect must accept at least one disciple." Feng was astonished by how this was unfolding and wondered why she wasn't happy despite the large expenditure. After calming down, Chen Xue had no choice but to accept the protagonist, although she harbored much resentment. On the other hand, Feng completed his task, earning a total of 200 prodigal points. He could now begin his spending journey. Subsequently, he eagerly asked the system if there were more tasks. Although he was unaware of the purpose of the prodigal points, he was eager to accumulate more. The system's response indicated that during periods without tasks, he could explore prodigal behaviors on his own initiative. The amount of resources consumed was not directly linked to the prodigal points, but any prodigal action would grant some points. Given this situation, Feng devised a solution. He approached Chen Xue firmly and asked if being the only disciple would make him her direct apprentice. She immediately rejected the idea. While it was already a problem to let him into the sect, considering him a direct disciple was out of the question. In response, the protagonist expressed his intention to purchase the position of direct apprentice at a high price. Both were momentarily stunned by this unusual proposition. Regaining her composure, Chen Xue smiled, finding this young man very interesting, and openly set a price of 100,000 high-grade spirit stones, stating that if he could provide them, she would accept him as a direct disciple. Feng's reaction was one of astonishment. He seemed incredibly surprised. Seeing this, she felt shrewd, thinking she had finally confused him. After all, even third-order sects might lack 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. However, the next moment, she herself was stunned. The protagonist couldn't believe that this was all it would cost. He had assumed it would be much higher. To prove his sincerity, he immediately took out a storage ring containing 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. Feng was secretly delighted. He was truly born to be a spender. He had easily spent another wave of spirit stones. As expected, the system deemed the prodigal behavior reasonable, awarding him another 200 prodigal points. At this moment, Chen Xue reflected on her life decisions. She would have elevated any third-order sect to a revered status with 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. She wondered why he chose her sect but could do nothing about it now. Thus, she agreed to make the protagonist her main disciple and handed him her black sword as a welcome gift. Inside, Chen Xue felt a complete sense of shame. The dignified sacred maiden not only accepted a direct disciple but also had to give a welcome gift. If this were to become known, it would be a total disgrace. However, Feng was almost in tears at this moment. After receiving the mystical sword, he really wanted to spend more stones. But the system indicated that a true prodigal should not accept gifts, so it deducted 20 prodigal points. If he returned the sword within an hour, the points would be restored. The protagonist was frustrated. This damned system was too meticulous. To return the mystical sword, he immediately knelt, presenting the sword with both hands. But Chen Xue merely looked at him, puzzled, and asked what he was doing. It turned out that Feng's intention was to spend money rather than get something for free. But this greatly angered her, and she immediately withdrew the sword. She asked him if he thought money could buy everything, But the protagonist, unafraid, told her that if she did not value his goodwill, then so be it. She, very annoyed, could not stop thinking, what kind of disciple is this who does not understand value at all? Her sword was a seventh-order spiritual tool, a treasure of the sect, and she couldn't understand how he dared to return it. Indignant, she flew away with a face full of resentment. On the other hand, the protagonist was perplexed, not expecting her to reject his offer. He asked Elder Bai, "Isn't the sect leader too shrewd? She is letting go of the chance to gain profit." To which Bai merely mentioned that it would be better for him to keep quiet, as if the sect leader heard him, it would be his end. This matter also greatly surprised Elder Bai, who wondered how an ordinary person could possess such colossal wealth. But he at least knew that since this man's arrival, the sect leader's mental state seemed to be transforming and growing from its stagnation. He thought it was likely that this new disciple was the key to breaking the stagnation. Elder Bai then hurried the protagonist to accompany him to the sect. Feng sat on the flying sword, counting birds, even allowing a bird to nest on his head to pass the time. He was interested in how to use the prodigal points. Suddenly, a personal information panel appeared. His prodigal points had reached 400, and he had not had the chance to use today's earnings. He wondered if this was the advantage of having tricks. The system then explained the realms from lower to higher, including the Spirit Sea realm, the realm of Chi Gathering, Spirit Fusion, Divine Repository, Purple Mansion, Original Spirit, Void Penetration, Tribulation Crossing, and so on. Prodigal points could be used to enhance these realms. For example, the Spirit Sea realm required 10 points for each upgrade, the Chi Gathering realm needed 100 points for each level, and so forth. Hearing this, the protagonist was overwhelmed and wondered if the points needed for the next levels were too high. Then, he opened the spending shop. There were several containers from which he could draw, each costing 100 prodigal points. There was an extremely low chance of obtaining high-quality rewards. After reflecting, Feng thought it was a bit expensive, but if he tried and got a high-quality reward, it would be worth it. However, upon further consideration, even if he got a high-quality reward, would it be useful to him? The system intervened to explain. For example, if you destroy a 9th-grade elixir in front of an alchemist, it counts as spending. The protagonist really wanted to do this, but now that he was just a mortal, flaunting wealth in front of cultivators would only bring trouble soon. To gain power, Feng spent 90 prodigal points to elevate his strength to the 9th level of the Spirit Sea realm. The sudden advancement caught Elder Bai's attention, who was very surprised and mentioned that this boy was forming his Spirit Sea. He immediately stopped flying, probed the spiritual energy around the protagonist, and was shocked again. Wondering why so much spiritual energy was needed to form the Spirit Sea, which would be enough for dozens of people, Elder Bai was even more amazed. Was he trying to advance even further? Usually, the first step in cultivation is forming the Spirit Sea, which is like laying the foundation. This process generally requires a calm environment and the help of elixirs to maximize the formation of the Spirit Sea, and after forming it, time is needed for stabilization. But he did not notice the protagonist taking any elixirs, much less forming it during flight. A moment later, Elder Bai was stunned again because Feng's realm continued to break through, moving from the first level of the Spirit Sea realm to the top of the 9th. Bai was absolutely horrified. What kind of genius was this? After the advancement was completed, the protagonist woke up but was not very satisfied as it took him a total of 10 minutes. He then asked with an innocent face, "Elder Bai, it took me 10 minutes to pass through 9 realms. Does the sect master think I am a failure?" Bai was unsure how to respond, questioning whether Feng was boasting. If this was considered a failure, it was incomparable to past failures. Even with abundant resources, it took Elder Bai 8 months to move from the formation of the Spirit Sea to the top of the 9th level. At that moment, Bai understood why Feng avoided cultivation techniques and weapons. He must possess a powerful personal technique, but the protagonist was confused as he had none. Hearing that he had no technique, disbelief was reflected on the elder's face. To confirm the truth, he personally examined him and was surprised once more. Feng lacked spiritual roots, and his Spirit Sea was vast like an endless ocean. At this point, the elder was perplexed and decided to wait until they returned to the sect for the young master to examine him. After arriving at the Star Soul sect and meeting Luo Chenchue, Bai shared the protagonist's advancement and that his Spirit Sea was 20 times larger than his own while reaching the peak of the Spirit Sea realm. More strangely, he had no spiritual roots. The sect leader was astonished and decided to investigate personally. To her amazement, what the elder had said was true. She asked the protagonist incredulously, "Without spiritual roots, how did you manage to advance?" At that moment, a mocking laugh was heard from outside. It was the Yuan Yu sect, requesting an audience with the sect master of the Star Soul sect. An elder spoke maliciously, "Why is the Star Soul sect so secretive? Surely you can't have no disciples." Chen Xue was truly upset. She had just accepted a new and unusual disciple today, which was already complicated, and now she had to deal with these visitors. So, she immediately went out to confront them and ask about their intentions. The elder said he had heard that joining the Star Soul sect required 10,000 low-grade spirit stones, which intrigued him greatly, so he brought his disciples to see for himself and challenged them to a competition. This infuriated Chen Xue even more. Without any disciples of her own, she could have easily dismissed such an annoyance, referring to the protagonist. But then she thought that if Feng received a lesson, he might leave her sect, so she allowed him to accept the challenge. Feng had no problem with that but needed to clarify whether he could use talismans. After all, he still had 10,000 talismans to spend. Upon hearing that he could, he proceeded confidently, then summoned his heavenly thunder talismans, stacking them into a small mountain, leaving the disciples of the Yuan Yu sect astonished. How does he have so many heavenly thunder talismans? Each emitted the energy fluctuations of a 9th grade spiritual item, meaning each could unleash a full force attack of the 9th level of the Spirit Sea realm. The elder was dumbfounded. His 3 disciples were only at the 9th level of the Spirit Sea realm. With so many talismans, even if he had more disciples, they couldn't win. Feng didn't care. "You said I could use talismans." He cheerfully threw the heavenly thunder talismans, fully enjoying the moment. In an instant, the field resonated with countless explosions, leaving Chen Xue and the others stunned. Each of those talismans was a 9th grade heavenly thunder talisman, each worth at least 1,000 low-grade spirit stones for cultivators of the same realm. One would be considered a trump card, and here was the protagonist throwing them around like they were mere trash. The 3 apprentices of the Yuan Yu sect were bewildered, urgently calling their instructor to leave, thinking this young man was truly skilled. Chen Xue was exasperated, questioning how this boy had amassed so much wealth. At first, she thought he might be defeated and retreat on his own, but that now seemed unlikely. Feng looked with self-satisfaction at his master, as if saying, "Didn't I do well?" However, she misinterpreted this, thinking the protagonist believed she was weak, which was why he challenged the Yuan Yu apprentices. It seemed she would need to demonstrate her authority as a master later. After several more hours of bombardment, the 3 Yuan Yu sect apprentices were miserably overwhelmed and could only dodge. Feng was thrilled as he continued his attacks, completely immersed in this extravagant display. Eventually, the apprentices had no choice but to cry and beg their master for help. The elder seemed to misunderstand, thinking that all these talismans were provided to the protagonist by the Star Soul sect. No wonder their recruitment standards were so high. Realizing he had gotten himself into trouble, the elder decided to take his apprentices and leave. Seeing this, Chen Xue saw an opportunity to make her point. She planned to teach the elder a lesson and revealed her strength in the divine repository realm, leaving the elder astonished. Even her sect leader was only in the divine repository realm. With Chen Xue's strength, she could annihilate their entire sect alone. Although she didn't intend to destroy them completely, she demanded that each of them leave an arm to save their lives, and they had no choice but to comply. Finally, Chen Xue ordered them to leave. Witnessing this, Feng was genuinely scared. He hadn't realized his beautiful master was so ruthless. Despite everything, she maintained her composure on the surface and asked him to retrieve the remaining talismans, but she felt powerless internally. At this point, she couldn't drive the protagonist away. At that moment, Feng made a request. He still had more than 9,000 heavenly thunder talismans left, unable to use them all by himself, and wanted his master to join in the fun. In response to this request, Chen Xue was left speechless, but since he didn't seem to care, she had little to say. She then accepted the protagonist's request, curious to see how long this spendthrift would continue. So, the two began to throw heavenly thunder talismans. Witnessing this spectacular scene, she recalled a memory from her past life, when her younger sister had asked her to set off fireworks together. She remembered a phrase her sister had said, "If we can't enjoy it until the end, wouldn't it be painful?" Reflecting on it now, She felt her younger sister was very right. Meanwhile, Elder Bai, who was about to go to sleep, was completely bewildered. The continuous explosions made him think they were being attacked by an enemy. Realizing that the noise outside was caused by the heavenly thunder talismans, he quickly dressed to investigate. When he saw the situation, he was utterly stunned. Feng and Chen Xue were senselessly throwing the heavenly thunder talismans. At this point, even Chen Xue had given in to the extravagant behavior, casually saying, "We're just getting rid of the heavenly thunder talismans." Seeing this, the protagonist invited the elder to join in the fun. Bai was furious and immediately struck Feng on the head, exclaiming, "What the hell are you two doing? Each of these is worth 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. Even the wealthy Star Soul sect cannot afford this kind of waste. Miss, what's wrong with you? Why are you participating in this madness?" However, all the elder's frustration vanished when the protagonist pulled out 100,000 high-grade spirit stones, with a slight smile, telling him to consider these spirit stones as compensation for interrupting his sleep. Elder Bai quickly opened his shirt, showing his strong muscles, and eagerly joined the extravagant act. The speed at which he threw the talismans was so fast it even surprised the protagonist. At that moment, a system notification appeared. Feng earned 100 points as a reward, as this was also considered wasteful behavior. It seemed that next time he should invest more spirit stones to improve the elder's health after all. When everything was done, Bai began to question his life choices. He never imagined he would feel so exhausted just throwing talismans. Of course, he reminded Feng that if there was manual labor in the future, he could count on him. He might be old, but he still had his strength. Chen Xue observed in silence, thinking that the Star Soul sect would be in chaos soon. Then she provoked Elder Bai, saying, "You're one of the 8 senior elders of the Extreme Star sect, and you've sold out for mere 100,000 high-grade spirit stones," to which Bai replied, "It's not about the spirit stones, it's about the dignity of the elders." The system appeared again, rewarding the protagonist with 1,000 wasteful points. With this, he could potentially advance to the 9th level of the Qi activation realm, 1,000 points perfect for surpassing the realm, and the remaining few hundred to open some treasures. At this point, Feng remembered that there were only 3 people in the Star Soul sect. Relying solely on Elder Bai might not be enough to waste resources quickly. If he had more young disciples, the rate of extravagance could increase exponentially. He imagined expanding the sect in the future, covering all the sect's expenses. Earning wasteful points seemed easy with this approach. As if on cue, a young man appeared at the entrance, asking, "Does your sect accept new disciples?" The moment the new disciple Wufeng entered the Star Soul sect, he felt that something was wrong. The ground was full of craters, an elder looked on the brink of death, a woman had a fierce appearance, and a man seemed a bit simple-minded. Wufeng instantly felt that the sect was unreliable and wondered if it was still early enough to flee. Feng welcomed him, stating, "Yes, we're still recruiting. To join, you need to contribute 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. If you contribute 100,000 high-grade spirit stones, you can become a direct disciple of the sect master," Feng stated proudly. "I am Feng, the first disciple of the sect and the senior disciple of the sect master." This scene left Wufeng stunned. The protagonist looked at him expectantly, hoping he would say he didn't have the money. That way, the protagonist could sponsor his entry. However, this idea was rejected by the system, which stated that such a wasteful approach was not justifiable without a reasonable explanation. Seeing this, Feng quickly invented a reason. "We get along well. The moment I saw him, I felt like he was a brother from another mother. Is it wrong to spend a little more for my brother?" Surprisingly, the system validated this justification, but at that moment, Wufeng was contemplating an escape. He felt that the sect was entirely money-oriented and unreliable. However, Feng wasn't willing to let him go so easily, especially since Wufeng was crucial to his plans for extravagance. Quickly, Feng restrained Wufeng with a chokehold, preventing him from leaving. At that exact moment, the boy received a message from his grandfather from the shadows. "Stay in this sect. Once I have settled my matters, I will come for you." Since he and his grandfather had discussed this, Wufeng stopped resisting. Meanwhile, at the sect's entrance, an elder observed the Star Soul sect, recognizing it as the sect founded by Luo Wuming's daughter. Seeing Elder Bai present as well, the elder felt reassured and comfortably allowed his grandson to join. Next, Feng dragged the new disciple over to Chenxue and said, "Master, I want him to be my junior disciple. Look how obedient he seems." Wu Feng was perplexed, unable to understand why his grandfather insisted on him staying in such an unreliable sect, but he was forced to comply with his grandfather's wishes. Chenxue watched helplessly, thinking they already had someone like Feng, but in the end, she told Wu Feng that to become a part of her sect, he would need to give 10,000 low-grade spirit stones, assuming the new recruit wouldn't be able to afford such an amount. However, Wu Feng, not short of funds, quickly handed over 10,000 low-grade spirit stones, expressing his desire to join the Star Soul sect. Chenxue was greatly surprised, as she hadn't imagined that this boy would have what she asked for. She had no choice but to accept Wu Feng as her disciple, but made it clear that she wouldn't provide any guidance. He would have to cultivate on his own. Chenxue thought he would surely leave after this. However, like the protagonist, the boy declared he didn't need resources or instructions. All the materials needed for his primary cultivation had already been provided by his grandfather. This statement infuriated the leader to the point of spitting blood. She couldn't understand why people enjoyed playing the fool. Elder Bai, finding the situation entertaining, congratulated Chenxue, "You've gained another disciple, miss." Defeated, she could only accept her fate, saying she would provide cultivation guidance the next day and advising them to find their own accommodation. She left with a heavy heart. Seeing this, Feng was slightly worried about his charming master. Since she seemed to be in a daze, he wondered if, after all, she would end up instructing them. Noticing the apparent wealth of the new disciple, Feng, who had previously considered sponsoring him, decided not to help him become a direct disciple. He already had one direct disciple, and that was enough. At this moment, Chenxue was truly furious. Later, the protagonist engaged in a conversation with his new disciple and used his position as the senior direct disciple to quickly promote Wu Feng to an inner disciple. The boy was speechless. His superiors seemed to be the least reliable and not very bright. Once established, Feng prepared to exploit Wu Feng. Upon entering, Wu Feng noticed an extraordinary alchemy furnace. He asked if Feng was an alchemist, to which Wu Feng raised 3 fingers, indicating that he was a third-grade alchemist. His pride was understandable. In this world, roles such as alchemists, artifact forgers, amulet masters, and formation masters were highly revered. Just holding such a title could earn great respect, as even a small pill, amulet, or divine artifact could determine a person's cultivation and survival. In his mind, Wu Feng already imagined the protagonist begging him to refine pills. Although he usually declined such requests, he would be more than happy to help his senior disciple. Besides, he was at the pinnacle of the spirit fusion realms, being at the 9th stage. He knew that if he revealed this, his senior disciple would undoubtedly be surprised. However, all of this was just a figment of the boy's imagination. Back in reality, Feng's reaction to Wu Feng's alchemist status was simply normal, which left the young alchemist quite unsettled, as he expected a different reaction from the protagonist. At that moment, Feng suddenly asked, "Among the third-grade spirit herbs, which ones are particularly rare?" Wu Feng thought for a moment and answered, "Demon bamboo herb, soul white flower, thunder purple fruit, among others. Even a 9th-grade alchemist rarely comes across these." Feng acknowledged his answer. Then he accessed the system, specifying the herbs the new disciple mentioned, and proceeded to open 4 vials. Shortly after spending 1,200 points, he obtained 2 demon bamboo herbs, 1 soul white flower, and finally, 3 thunder purple fruits. Seeing Feng frozen in place, Wu Feng assumed his senior disciple did not recognize these herbs and felt ignorant. He consoled him, saying it was normal for those untrained in alchemy. However, to his surprise, the protagonist ran off, mentioning he was going to get some water. The young alchemist chuckled inwardly, thinking his unpredictable senior disciple was quite considerate. Wu Feng decided he would make some pills for him later. However, moments later, the protagonist returned with a pot of soup. This made Wu Feng very surprised, as he recognized the rare herbs he had just mentioned floating in the broth. Hastily, he fished out the herbs from the soup after confirming their authenticity, feeling as if he were about to explode. "Brother, you've wasted treasures." Without warning, Feng snatched the herbs and casually commented, "I heard that preparing spirit herbs is beneficial for cultivators, so I thought these few spirit herbs might be something special." As he spoke, he crushed the herbs under his foot right in front of Wu Feng and ground them a few more times just in case. Witnessing this, The new disciple panicked and desperately shouted, "Stop!" Without hesitation, he lunged at the protagonist, trying to salvage what was left of the herbs, but upon closer inspection, there was not even a trace of the herbs left. Wufeng felt numb from the shock. Having successfully wasted resources, Feng earned 1,500 points. He laughed, thinking his investment had been worthwhile after all. He had only destroyed 3 herbs and still had 6 in total at that moment. At this point, Wufeng felt utterly disheartened, unable to bear seeing such precious herbs being destroyed before him, especially considering that even his grandfather had never seen such rare herbs. Wufeng was inconsolable, crying bitterly. Feng approached him to offer some comfort. It's okay, it's my fault for not recognizing the herbs. Since they're crushed, why don't you take a rest? I'll leave first." Returning to his room, Feng immediately used the precious herbs for a foot soak. It felt really pleasant.